Again, the whole goal of Community IQ Political Series is to engage that relationship with everyone who holds an office in our county. And remember, to engage and to encourage building up versus tearing down. Voices of our community, Community IQ. Sit back and enjoy. Our special guest, Carey Baker.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning back in to Community IQ on YouTube. This is we're coming at you live from Garrett's Gentleman's Barbershop in downtown Eustis, and this is our, sixth or seventh in a series of political interviews with our local elected officials. And tonight, this is a special night for me because this is a gentleman who I've known really since before Nike was around. He and I went to school together from kindergarten all the way through high school, and so I'm pleased to have Carey Baker here tonight. I don't know what to call him, whether I should call him senator or representative or his honor, as he is currently the property appraiser for Lake County. He served the citizens of Lake County in a number of capacities over his career, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. But Carey, welcome to the program.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can call me Carey. That's certainly what most people call me. So, yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah,
and Garrett is my barber.
Yeah.
So, this is hometown right here. So it's good.
Home territory. You feel right at home.
Oh yeah,
that's good. Well, the whole Lake County is your home territory, and but we'll get into that in a little more detail. Carey, you were born and raised in Lake County, and your father had a business here in Lake County for as long as anyone can remember. Talk a little bit about your family and the influence that they had on you.
Sure. Well, it's pretty neat growing up here in Lake County, and this is my hometown, my home county, and especially to be able to hold public office, be a local businessman, and yeah, my father started the business here in Lake County. That's the A.W. Peterson Gun Shop there in Mount Dora, available for all your hunting and shooting needs. So after World War II, my daddy he actually moved to Lake County in '46, lived down Bay Lake, built a little house there. My grandparents had already moved to Lake County by then. And that was probably they probably got here 38 or 39. And so Dad used to tell me about, he had a World War II Jeep. Him and Mom would drive the Jeep, surplus Jeep, up to Eustis. And they'd cross the bridge that went over a little Lake Harris, but it's not where the bridge is currently. It was a little farther south. It was just a wooden bridge, and they'd take that and drive up to Eustis through a lot of sugar sand roads. And then Dad and Mom ended up heading out to Colorado, where Dad went to a gunsmithing school, ended up teaching gunsmithing there, met A.W. Peterson, who was a famous gunsmith and gun shop out there, ended up buying the business in 1949, moving it back here to Mount Dora in 1953. I was born in 1963, and so I sort of basically grew up in a gun shop. When I was 11 years old, my daddy would make me go down the shop. I had to sweep the floor and clean the glass counters, empty the trash. And, I just came from the shop, and there I was, sweeping the floor, cleaning the glass counters, emptying the trash. But it's a good thing. It's a cool business. So here, this gun shop was established in 1886, so it's 135 years old. And it's like part of me, but I know so it's been in two families, the Peterson family and the Baker family, and all my brothers had worked there at the shop, and my oldest brother now just retired several years ago. So my brother Roy and Roy's a Lake County fixture. So we still own the shop, and it's just neat, and it grounds me, especially as an elected official. And my daddy, by the way, was the first Republican ever elected to any office in Lake County. And that was November of 1962, before I was born in March. And he only served one term. The guy he beat came back and beat him. But that's how it goes. It was 80% Democrat, 20% Republican back then. So the fact that my dad was able to win was, sort of a minor miracle. But it sort of set the stage for other Republicans to gain a foothold in Lake County. And so I grew up but I never really thought of my dad as an elected official because he only served one term. He was active in politics, but I always just felt when I saw my father, I saw a businessman who was highly involved in his community. So, I mean, he belonged to lots of organizations. He always ended up being the president of those organizations. And I got dragged along to a lot of dinners, a lot of meetings, but it was neat. And that was a time when the community, well, of course, Lake County is much smaller, and there was just all the businesses were independently owned. So there was a lot of business owners. And so those were my dad's friends. And some of them are, still with us, like Gene Smith and Tavares. Guy's like 93.
Yeah.
I saw him like at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was up early, going to work early, and there he was out with a couple workmen. And he's dressed like he ought to have a hammer in his hand.
Right.
And he's sharp as a tack.
Yep.
I mean, this guy is incredible, and what a great businessman he was. And my dad and him were partners in a cattle ranch in Columbia.
Right.
And so I went down with both Gene and my dad and my brother Stuart at the time. I was 17 years old, and that was a pretty incredible experience. So anyway, that's growing up here, being part of the community. I went to the same church, First United Methodist Church, just one block from here. Yep. I went there from an infant till 45. Now I'm down at the Baptist Church here about a mile farther. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Bogus, A.A. Bogus, he delivered me.
Yep.
So he was my family doctor, my personal doctor until he died, and now his son Dan is my doctor. So the only doctor I ever had was named Bogus.
Yep.
I don't know what I'm going to do when Dan retires. But what a cool experience living here in this community, having the family doctor as personal friends and knows the whole family and was the family doctor there, and and that's why I'll never leave. I'll leave for vacation, sneak off, but Lake County's always going to be home for me, and it's cool.
Very, very similar backgrounds, Carey and I, and he grew up maybe 2.5 miles away from me. I was more in downtown Tavares. Carey was you grew up right behind the gun shop.
That's it.
I mean, your dad walked to work every day, and I grew up on St. Clair Abrams in Tavares. I went from kindergarten through high school without ever leaving a 2-block radius. I mean, the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school were all on a 2-block radius, and I lived a block away. So I literally walked to school every day for 12 years. I mean, and didn't think twice about it. Now, it wasn't 5 miles uphill in snow. It was a nice, easy little 1-block walk through Mr. Cockerham's yard there. It always gave us permission, and you're right. It was like a Mayberry type atmosphere growing up around here. And Dr. Bogus delivered me, and Dan still is my doctor. And I threatened him, you can't retire until I die, which at the rate that I'm going might be very soon. But anyway, it's a cool atmosphere. But Carey, you grew up in a very conservative family. I grew up in a family full of Democrats, it took me a while to get over that. But once I did and started to realize that what politics was all about and what made this country run, I think you and I share a lot of the same philosophies too. But it took me longer to get there than it did you.
Well, and my daddy was he was a Lincoln Republican, literally from Illinois. So my mama was from Nashville.
Right.
So Dad just brought his Republicanism from Illinois here. So, and of course, the Southern Democrats most of the Democrats, were pretty conservative by nature.
Yes.
So it was a fairly easy transition for the majority of them,
It's funny you say the Lincoln, the Southerners were Democrats because the Republican Party was the party of Lincoln.
Oh, that's right.
And Southerners had a few problems with Mr. Lincoln left over from several generations before. So, yeah, it was unusual to find Southern Republicans.
And most of my customers at the gun shop, I mean, when I was in high school, because I worked almost every day after school at the gun shop, and probably the vast majority of my customers were Democrats.
Yes.
I mean, that's how it was. So when the Democrat Party started to change, which the Republican Party really hasn't changed. I mean, the core values that the typical Republican holds are the same values they held 50 years ago, 60 years ago. So it's the Democrats that changed, and as the nationally, especially, they became anti-gun and more socially liberal. then they just lost the Southern Democrats. They just didn't have much in common anymore. And so now there's a great divide, unfortunately,
right,
between the two parties.
Yep. Very sad, and we've talked about that before.
Well, it's sad because it has become now personal.
Yes.
And like I talk to my kids now about, I go, listen, no matter what political beliefs you adopt, if your political beliefs divide you, if it separates you from your parents, if it somehow separates you from your friends, you need to really think about what you believe. Yes. I mean, I'm okay with, we all can have our different beliefs, but if somehow it makes you think that your parents are bad people or your friends are bad people because they hold different beliefs, you need to be thinking twice about that. Yeah. And I worry about that, but that's where we are. It's, people literally, oh, you're a different party. That must mean you're a bad person. Well, that's ridiculous. Yes. But that's where we are right now. I don't know how we overcome it. It seems to be getting worse.
It's very unfortunate. And you make a very good point that, we used to, have political discourse, but it didn't cause us to hate each other, despise each other. We respected each other's opinions and recognized that, you just thought differently than I did, but it didn't make you a bad person. And today, unfortunately, it's just full of vitriol. I don't ever remember a time in this country when it was like this, and it's very disheartening.
No, I remember my dad had a friend, Mr. Peters, who just died, well, somewhat recently. And my father was an infantry soldier in World War II, U.S. Army, hit twice by German mortar rounds. He was probably no more than 100 miles from where his uncle was killed in France in World War I by a German mortar round or artillery. And so my dad had all the reason in the world to dislike Germans, yet Mr. Peters was a German infantry soldier man that had immigrated to America, and they were very close friends.
Is that a technical term, German infantry soldier man?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Well, I'm trying to, use normal terms. So anyway, but here he is. My father and this German soldier were friends, close friends. Yep. And so, so if that could happen, there's just no reason for us to hate each other over political differences.
Yeah, it really is. I don't see an end to it either, Carey. That's what bothers me is that, this country goes through periods, but right now I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old and curmudgeon-y, but it really disheartens me. And
well, it's sort of scary. Yeah. When you think in biblical terms, when they were building the Tower of Babel, all of a sudden the good Lord made them speak different languages, and that divided them.
Right.
So they were of one body, one people, and then language divided them. And we're sort of being divided not just by language, but by beliefs that are just so polar opposites.
Right.
That America is just dividing itself. And I don't know, we have to have something in common, and some of the few things we used to have in common are being rejected, at least by one side, yep. As in not the Republican side, the other side.
Right.
And so that makes it tough when we all can't, right. If we can't stand for the national anthem, we can't put our hands on our heart and say a pledge together. If we can't do a few of those community type things together, then what is there left?
Right. And worship together. We grew up when, you may have been Baptist and Methodist and Catholic, but we all worshiped together come Christmas time. And we all got together and we all recognized our faith, and it wasn't something to be ashamed of or to try to hide. And, that's something too that seems to be dividing this country again. And I don't understand it. I don't, but anyway.
But it will eventually, if it continues this path, we'll just get further divided. It's hard to imagine that we could, but I think we can.
Right.
When we demonize each other. So anyway, as for me personally, I try to be careful with my words.
Right.
I still believe what I believe. I'm a very conservative guy, mm-hmm. But I try to choose my language to not be, I still state my opinion, and I still state my differences, but,
right.
I think we all probably need to be better on how we talk to each other.
Correct.
You know,
Yes.
the good Lord says to love your neighbor. He didn't say love your neighbor if they're the same party.
That's right.
Or love your neighbor if they're the same color or speak the same language. He said, when asked what the greatest commandment was, he says, love the Lord with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. And so that's the commandment.
Right.
From Jesus' mouth. So that's what I try to do.
Yep.
I fail at times, of course, but it's on my heart and on my mind all the time. So.
Excellent point. Excellent point. And we that's the greatest thing that you can do is to try to love everyone as yourself. The golden rule: treat other people as you would have yourself be treated. And so, anyway, excellent point. Let's talk a little bit, Carey, about your service to the citizens of Lake County, and really broader beyond that as your career moved on. But you started out running for state office as a state representative. And what year was that?
Well, wouldn't that have been filed in 99? The election was in 2000.
That's correct.
Yep.
And you were elected to the State House, and you served how many years at the State House?
So 4 years in the House and 6 years in the Senate.
Right.
Spent a couple years working for the Senate President, Mike Herodopoulos, after my Senate term was over. And then, of course, I was elected property appraiser, and that's now been 8 years. So all total, I've been in, someone called me jokingly called me a career politician not too long ago, and I went to object, and then I thought to myself, well, I guess after 20 years, I sort of am.
Right. Yeah. Well,
I'd like to think I'm grounded. I still, like I said, I still have a business I run, so I'm very thoughtful and mindful of the business community in which I serve, because I am one. And so, yeah, so it's been a great career. I've loved every minute of it. When I first ran, I had no children ran for the House. And so it was sort of easy driving back and forth to Tallahassee. And then we added 1 and 2 and 3 children, and it got a little tougher. So really the transition from going to the Senate, where I was gone a lot, state Senate, to being locally representing folks as their property appraiser. Now I'm home. I get to spend time with the kids. And of course, I'm involved in the Boy Scouts. So I'm camping on the weekends with the Boy Scout troop. And my son was a Boy Scout. He made Eagle this past year.
Outstanding.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I was all excited about that. He almost quit on me. Teenage kids. And when he was talking about quitting, I was thinking, all right, son, you're going to learn a very hard lesson. And I was thinking, you're going to regret it. And then finally he said, all right, I'll stick it out. And darned if he didn't, and get his Eagle. And so I'm very proud of him. And
you should be.
Yeah, my girls are running track right now. Yeah. By the way, they're hoofing it. One of them runs the 1 mile, and one is part of the 440 relay team. And so I'm excited about them and their little track career. Yeah. And of course, I've talked to them also about serving in the military. I ended up serving. So when we were still seniors in high school,
right.
So on April of our senior year, I raised my right hand and joined the Florida Army National Guard.
Because you had just turned 18.
I just turned 18 in March, and a month later, I was a member of the Florida National Guard, and I stayed there from 18 to 50, so 32 years I put in.
Right.
And that was just a wonderful career that I recommend to kids. I was able to do obviously I had a business. I ran for political office. I got married, had kids. I did all that and still had a very active military career. Spent a year in Iraq. Matter of fact, that was the 3rd year I was in the Florida legislature. Mm-hmm. And they were very kind to me, my colleagues in the House. They tied a yellow ribbon around my chair and said kind things about me. Right. And I was never more effective. All the bills I had filed, they all passed because nobody wanted to vote against Baker's bills when he was gone. And I called in a couple times on a satellite phone. Yeah. It was about midnight or 1 over there in Iraq, and I led him in the pledge one time, which was very nice. And I forgot, we just chatted maybe a couple other times, but it was cool.
That's
it was very cool. Yep.
Now, Carey, you did something kind of unique. I mean, not many people can say they did it. You ran for a statewide office. I mean, that's 67 counties in the state of Florida. And that's a lot of work.
It was. So I thought I thought I was going to be a commissioner of agriculture. And it is still, by the way, a very cool job.
Yes.
Commissioner of Agriculture oversees quite a few various industries, but they also are in charge of ag policy, essentially, in the state of Florida. They oversee the concealed weapon permit and all the licensing of security officers. They're in charge of the state forestry division.
Gas tanks.
So all the weight, and that means weights and measures. So anything in commercial business where you're weighing and measuring things as part of what you do, the Department of Agriculture oversees that.
Weigh stations, right?
Yeah, weigh stations. So if you were to go into a grocery store, those machines, they weigh the ham out. You buy your 6 ounces of ham. Well, the Department of Agriculture makes sure you get 6 ounces.
Yes.
So anyway, it's a really cool job, and so I got into that race, and I was all over the place running, and then old Adam Putnam decided he wanted to run, and he pretty much smoked me at that point. So I saw the writing on the wall, and I decided to bow out of that race, but it was a great experience. Here's a fun story about Republicans and Democrats. So at one point, I think I was in Washington County, that's in the Panhandle, and I had the Democrat sheriff driving me around the county. He said, well, let's go see the Republican Party chairman. I go, okay. Right. And then we went to see the Democrat Party chairman, and that's just sort of how they're still a little old school up there.
Yes.
They'll vote Democrats for the local offices, but Republican for governor, Republican for president. Mm-hmm. And even now, a lot of those even since then, and the 10 years has passed since then, it's changed a bit. That sheriff is probably now a Republican. So.
Well, you're selling yourself a little short. You really were the front runner for Secretary of Agriculture, and as you said, Adam Putnam, which Adam Putnam had from the time he was 8 years old, had been groomed for politics as a member of the Ben Hill Griffin family. Who's
I won several straw ballots.
Yes,
in Orange County. Yep. I whooped them pretty good. Yep. But at the end of the day, to successfully run statewide requires you just can't grassroot it. There's just too many people, so you have to raise millions.
Yes,
and millions doesn't get you very far in the state of Florida. I mean, you're having to do mail, you're having to do TV. And Adam, he literally in his first 3 months probably raised more than I had raised in 9 months or so. Yep. And so as it was going, he was gaining momentum, I just made a strategic decision. I was just crunching the numbers, and I think I still could have been competitive in the primary, but at the end of the day, the decision was made. Yeah.
I remember you and I had conversations about that, and you handled yourself very graciously, and you did the right thing. Probably did the right thing for your family, and everything's worked out perfectly.
Yeah, I bowed out. I endorsed Adam.
Yep.
And it was all good. And then a couple years later, there I am, Lake County Property Appraiser, which has been a great gig. I love it.
Yep.
I got the best team in the world, by the way. My office staff, they're wonderful. So if anyone ever needs anything from the Lake County Property Appraiser's office, you will be, my ladies, especially up front, are just outstanding. They are kind and knowledgeable, and we get lots of favorable comments about their
We are very blessed here in Lake County with our constitutional officers. There's no doubt about it. And we've had a chance to talk to Alan Hayes, and we've got David Jordan coming up. Of course, we're here with you tonight, and got Sheriff Grinnell coming up. So we are extremely blessed here in Lake County with
Sheriff Grinnell's a Leesburg High School graduate. Right. David's Umatilla. That's right. Jordan, Umatilla High School.
And we'll never let him forget that.
Yeah. So, I don't know where Gary Cooney, where he started out.
He ain't from around here.
He ain't from around here.
It's like we like to say.
And neither is Alan Hayes, but they are they fit in quite well here in Lake County, and we are lucky. And I get along with all of them. We have to work together on several issues. So it's even our county commissioners. I've had a great relationship with all of them. I have a great relationship with the current ones.
Yes.
So that's nice. And once again, it's all about I make sure that I am. I'm very careful about that. I don't criticize folks unnecessarily, and and it's we're all on the same team ultimately.
Yes.
And we need to, especially local politics, there's just no room for personal bickering and silly things that get in the way of serving the citizens. So.
That's exactly right. And thank you for pointing that out. Your job is to serve the citizens of Lake County, and that's your primary number one, A1 job, is to take care of the people that you represent. And y'all do an incredible job there in the property appraiser's office, and David and Gary, all of y'all are just fantastic.
Oh, and when I generally brag about the constitutional officer, especially here in Lake County, I almost always brag about David Jordan's office.
Oh, yeah.
Because almost all of us remember how things used to be in the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Oof.
How poor the service was, how long the waits were, how they just were not customer friendly. And then, of course, Bob McKee, he's the one that moved that office to where it is, but David was his chief deputy. So David's the guy was making things happen for many years, and now it's wonderful that he became the tax collector, and the service is just incredible.
Yes.
So when I brag, a lot of times I'm bragging about David Jordan in his office, and people go, "You're right," and I go, "Yeah." I mean, it's so funny. I mean, there's actually Department of Motor Vehicle jokes, and they're around the whole country.
Right.
And Florida used to be full of them too, but we have changed that.
Yes.
Here in Lake County, or here in the state of Florida, by turning it over to the local tax collectors. It just immediately saw dividends in customer service.
Yes.
So.
Yep. Incredible.
So I could spend a half an hour talking about David Jordan and the great job he's doing as tax collector, and we work together closely.
Yes.
It's my job to compile, and I sort of I do all the math.
Right.
I'm like the accountant. So I do the values. I take the millage rates the cities and counties pass. I do all the math. I develop the tax bill, and I turn it over to David to collect.
Right.
And so anyway, there's a lot of interaction that goes on during that whole process.
Right.
And so he's just a joy to work with. And both of us try to be very customer friendly.
Right.
So when customers have an issue, our first thought is, well, how can we help them? We got to follow the law, of course.
Right.
But we always, both of us take the attitude that if someone's complaining, well, maybe they're right.
Yes.
Maybe we have messed up.
Right.
So how do we fix it if we did? And you can't, sometimes you can't, there's certain things we can't fix unless both of us are willing to fix it, both the property appraiser and the tax collector together. And so Dave and I have never had an issue in which we were helping customers in which we disagreed. We both found ways to take care of people.
One of the things, Carey, that your office does that fascinates me, years ago with your predecessor, Ed Havel, I used to do the special master hearings for exemptions, for agricultural exemptions, homestead exemptions, those kinds. So when you, in your capacity, either grant or deny those exemptions, usually with a denial, somebody may have an appeal on that. And I used to hear those cases. And talk a little bit about, because, Lake County, when you and I were born, you said it earlier, this was an agricultural community. I mean, we grew oranges in Lake County. That's what we did. That's not the case anymore, but people still try to maintain those agricultural exemptions. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, of course, Lake County was the single largest citrus producing county in the country. Matter of fact, I was looking at some old aerial, 1941 and 1958 aerials, and it was just stunning. Yes. Just nothing but we lived it. We grew up in a large orange grove.
That's right.
I think 120,000 acres.
That's
and so now, of course, we don't have that, but we still have a lot of agriculture, and it's just much more diverse. There's a lot of transition that goes on, and so really the challenge that I have and that we have is that we want, knowing that citrus greening and citrus canker has devastated the agriculture, knowing that they're having to transition, but realizing that they're still in even though they may have dead trees there, if they give us a plan that they're transitioning. And I mean, if somebody's been in the citrus business for 50 years and they tell me they're going to go into blueberries or something else, I'm going to take them at their word, and they give us a plan. And so some people will look at that old orange grove and say, Baker, look at that. They're not in agriculture. I go, well, I'm given the benefit of 50 years of doubt here. They were in agriculture, and they're an agricultural family, a farming family. And then there's also, quite frankly, there's a lot of law that makes Florida a very farming friendly community. So not only our state constitution has protection in it, state law, many court cases. Sometimes I get beat up about developers. If they cross every T and dot every I about adopting an agriculture plan on their property, I have to grant it. There's just no question. And now sometimes some property appraisers, and maybe include my predecessor, would deny them just because, well, okay, you can have a little fun beating up on the developer, but he's going to win. So I try not to do that. I want to follow the law. What does the law say? I'm an administrator, elected administrator of the law. That's what I do. And if they do what they're supposed to do, we grant it. But occasionally, like right now, I'm in a lawsuit because I had previously granted ag, and then they decided they would do agriculture practices that weren't normal, so out of the normal that we denied them, and now we're in a lawsuit. Right. But I've tried. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I try to work with the agriculture. Right. I would love for us to try to keep some agriculture in here in Lake County. It's probably an impossible task. But we do our best, and we do love our farmers and our cattlemen, and so the guys that are trying to stick it out. Do we really want to be a nation in which our food sources come from other countries? I don't. Right. And also there's also just so folks can understand, when you get an ag classification, it does definitely decrease the property taxes that they pay, but that's because the value of green beans, the value of corn, it is very small per acre. It only produces just in the thousands per acre. Mm-hmm. And if they paid the same exact property rate, tax rate, there would immediately would be no more agriculture. It'd be gone tomorrow. So it's based on sort of an income approach. How much income does that hayfield make or produce? How much income does a cattle produce? And then we use an income methodology, which is a standard appraisal practice, to determine the value based on their income and the use of that property. And it works, and it keeps us in farming where we are. People love green space. Well, there's nothing better than pasture with cattle on it for green space, but so we want them to be viable and profitable, and we want them to, and so we do our best to try to make sure that happens.
Well, it's also based, Carey, you make a great point on the fact that property needs less services. An agricultural farm needs less services than a residential subdivision or a strip mall or something like that. Police don't have to go out there very often.
Cattle commit very few crimes.
Exactly. Yes. They don't go to school.
No, that's right.
So you don't need school taxes off of it. So there's rationale behind what they're doing, and it makes a lot of sense. And your point about green space is outstanding. I was in farming when I was with head of Family Dynamics, and I used to drive around in a truck with my favorite bump sticker was no farmers, no food.
That's it.
And you got to eat from somewhere, man. And if you don't protect the farmers and the food that they grow, then where are you going to? Are you going to get your tomatoes from the Netherlands like you see in Publix now? Uh-huh. That's ridiculous. That it's cheaper for Publix to buy tomatoes from the Netherlands and serve them in their store than it is to buy them from a Popka or it's crazy.
And the state of Florida can produce a lot of tomatoes.
Ooh, yes, sir. Yep.
So it's sad that we're losing a lot of that. And
yep.
Some of it's inevitable. I get that, but we definitely don't want to have policies that work against it. So
before I get you in trouble tonight, I'm going to ask you this. We're about to wrap this up, but you've talked about your kids, you've talked about your career, you talked about your family, but you haven't talked about your wife, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that in order to keep you out of trouble, and then we'll wrap this up tonight.
Well, first place, she's a Leesburg High School graduate, okay? And so it's Lori, and Lori is currently she's done a lot of things. She was a banker. She was had her own marketing company, several actually, and she decided not so long ago, it seems, she wanted to be a flight attendant. So she was a flight attendant for Allegiant, which was pretty cool. And especially because we got to fly places for free. Matter of fact, so Lori and I took the three kids. We went to Hawaii Didn't cost us anything. And getting the problem with Hawaii, yeah, it's a little expensive when you get there, but it's still normal. The cost of Hawaii is flying back and forth. Well, as soon as you remove that cost, it was awesome.
Yeah.
So anyway, but she now has gotten into real estate.
Yep.
So she's a realtor and she's just killing it.
Yeah.
I mean, she has been hustling and so she's no longer flying, but she is a very hard worker.
Yes.
So my kids they see their parents as hardworking parents.
Yep.
And so Lori is just tremendous, and she's a wonderful asset to me. I mean, everything that I've done, most of my success, she has been my partner in that.
Yep.
So especially from the very first time I ran for office, she was right there going door to door with me. And that's one thing I always talk to candidates about. I go, is your spouse on board with this? Because if they're not, it can be a problem,
yes.
both politically and
yes.
for your family. And so I've just been lucky that I haven't had those type of issues. So, and she's always involved in her community.
Yep.
I mean, she's just a beautiful woman and very smart, and I'm a lucky guy.
Yes, you are. Very strong, very powerful, very successful young lady. And yes, you are a lucky man. Carey, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll have you back again and talk a little bit more about what your role is as the property appraiser for Lake County. And we appreciate your time here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was awesome.
All right. That's the end of this episode of Community IQ, and we'll be back in another week with another episode. Thank you very much.